Welcome back to another episode of Daddy Issues. Today we got on Drew, and he's going to talk a little bit about his story and kind of what he went through with having attorneys, not having attorneys, what were the positives and negatives from that. So if you want to introduce yourself and...
Awesome. How you guys doing? I'm Drew. My daughter is currently 8 years old. She was born in July of 2014. I was 25 years old at that point in time. And it was a new experience for me. I just got out of college, and it was a year out of college, and I was trying to figure out my life. And all of a sudden, you get a daughter that comes into your life. So it's a new experience, and you think you understand what's going to go on in regards to court and custody and things of that nature, but it's not really how it's usually approached, or it's not really, it's portrayed that way, but it's not exactly how it is. So it was a brand new experience for me, and there was some difficulties. Of course, there's a lot of good times, but there was a lot of difficult times as well.
Yeah. Now, were you and your ex on speaking terms, or like how did that happen?
That's a good question. When she was pregnant, at a certain point in time, it was a difficult time, so we were separated. But I was living in Maine, and she also was living in Maine. She grew up in Maine, and we wasn't really on speaking terms at that point in time. So it was more so anticipation, based on the 9 months that you understand that that's when your child's gonna be born, and so you're anticipating that time frame. And I did receive a call. And we spoke a little bit because it's only rational, but it was towards the end of the pregnancy that we had more conversations.
Now, did she, and I could be way off here, but did she want you back, or was she like, is that why she was so mad at you, because she wanted the family and it kind of wasn't going to be like that? Or...
That's a good question. Honestly, I think we were both thinking the same way. Like, hey, we want a family. We want to see our daughter grow up with a mother and father, but we wasn't basically compatible to the extent where we felt we were supposed to be together.
Okay.
I think we had came to a conclusion that we were meant to have a beautiful daughter together, but it wasn't we wasn't meant to be together. Now, at the same time, when I mean not be together, it just we when we did get back together, which was about 3 times.
Oh, okay.
We
So you guys did
separated,
try.
yeah, we went back together. It didn't work out. Then we separated again. Then it came to just a conclusion, I think, amongst both of us, probably primarily me, because like I mentioned, I was living in Maine, and I made a decision to move back to Boston for work.
Yeah.
So that was a huge decision amongst me, because my custody battle and things in regards to custody wasn't completely solidified. So me making a decision to leave Maine to go to Boston was a difficult decision.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't aware of the court system, and I honestly was when I moved down to Boston, we still was on talking terms at that point in time. And I let her know before I left.
Right.
I wasn't just like I bounced. I'm like, hey, there's a chance I might be leaving to Boston. What do you feel about that? How do you feel? And she wasn't too like opposing towards it. Like, hey, you shouldn't leave, or you should leave. She didn't really. It wasn't a big deal to her.
Yeah. So, now, how did it get to the point where you guys are, and because if you're getting back together 3 different times and you guys are kind of on speaking terms, how did it get to the point where now you have to file in court to be able to see your kid? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. As far as it goes, she was the one that initiated the custody battle.
Oh, but
And
she already had full custody.
correct. No, so what do you mean by full
Like
custody?
she already or I don't want to say her name, but your child was staying with her, right?
So when she was born, literally maybe a month. That's the most. A month after um my daughter was born, I received some documents from the court stating, hey, there's a court date for emotion or something of that nature for a battle of your daughter. Not a battle, but
Right.
something some
I bet she
word
just wanted it on paper, like she had
something on
custody.
paper,
Yeah.
and I think it was more initiated by her family.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be something you might want to do. Honestly, I personally I thought it was gonna be more so we're on talking terms.
Yeah.
Although similar to our relationship, we might have arguments, and this is just the perspective of a new father.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Something that I was not expecting to have a child. I couldn't barely take care of myself, and that's the honest truth. I grew up in foster care, so this was just an opportunity to, after college, to say, okay, let me figure things out. So when I received those documents, it was really like I didn't understand the documents.
Right. And how old were you?
I was 25.
Yeah. So I mean, that's still pretty young
Yeah.
to have a family.
Yeah. So yeah, very young. I didn't think I was young.
Right, yeah.
At 25, I thought I was really mature.
But when you're talking about raising another human,
Another
it's
human being
yeah.
is definitely difficult. So she initiated it by, when I received the documents, my daughter was probably a couple months old, a month, 2 months, no more than 6 months. I said a month, but no more than 6 months. And I think I went to the court when she was like 6 months, and that's when we initiated the court documents, and it was pretty lenient. It was more so like I was seeing my daughter. I was able to see my daughter 3 days a week, maybe 5 days a week, because I live in Lewiston, Maine, which is a small town.
Yeah.
She lived up the street. I had my own apartment. I had a pretty decent job, which was a marketing firm within in Maine, which was a pretty decent marketing firm. And if you stay consistent, you made decent money. So I was doing pretty well where I was at. But I wasn't sure if that what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Right.
And so by having a daughter, it made me stay consistent with work.
Yeah.
Where if I didn't have a child, like young man, which I was bouncing around a lot.
But you can do that when you're young. Right, you don't have anything,
young,
responsibilities.
Yeah. And respectfully, a lot of people might frown upon it, but I didn't have much responsibility. Right. So when things occurred, when things got rough, which I didn't want, I was fine with my friends, I'll pay you a couple $dollars to stay with you for a couple hours until I figure things out.
Yeah.
Or you match up with one of your friends and you say, okay, I'll deal with their nonsense just so I get it back on track. But I can't just I needed a place where my child can come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was aware of that. And so it was 6 months. They gave me an opportunity to see her 3 times a week, and see her consistently. And it got difficult. The time got difficult was when I had an opportunity to see her, and we wasn't on the same page with minor things.
Yeah.
And that made it difficult to try to talk to each other about how we're going to be able to see and not have control. Control, I don't think it's the proper word, but how to balance our relationship.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have a proper balance. And I think sometimes the mother of the relationships don't realize, or should realize, that the father doesn't. I can't speak on every relationship, but my relationship, I wasn't trying to control the whole situation.
Right.
The primary situation was that I wanted to see my daughter and know that I had an opportunity to see my child. And when I did, it kind of relieved some stress, some anxiety over me. Then I can get back to livelihood. But when we got in some minor arguments over some petty things, in regards to our child, it caused us to separate, and I realized that I wasn't able to see my daughter, and it came to a conclusion that I couldn't just speak to her about it.
Right.
So and that's when I had to come to understanding, like, okay, so I don't really never really in my life really handled things with cops, and that's just the way I approach life. I'm not a person that really deals with cops or the court system. My foster mom and my mom is a lawyer, and she taught me to kind of deal and understand law to an extent, and that's lawyers themselves. They study different types of law. but I realized I had to go through the court system in order to see my child.
Yeah.
And that was difficult because like I mentioned, I never really dealt with the court system like that, but that was difficult because when you're trying to think of something and then you bring it to existence, you can't really actually rationalize it and have the actual understanding of it if you never dealt with it.
Mm.
So it was difficult because it's people were saying, "Why haven't you seen your daughter?" And it used to
Right.
frustrate me.
Right. It's not that easy. Yeah.
It used to frustrate me
Yeah.
a lot, and especially when it comes from people that don't have a child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you're not working and you're not consistent getting paid, and you think to yourself like you need the utmost money to have a lawyer, and that's not necessarily the scenario,
Yeah.
but you need funding.
Yeah, you definitely need some money. I would say one thing that I kind of preach about on here is you need a good attorney. Don't just get any old attorney,
Certainly.
because some people will just not do the right paperwork,
Correct.
and it could screw you. And they don't care. They're still getting a paycheck. So,
Correct.
so what was your attorney situation like? Did you get a good one? Did you?
That's a good question. So, to be honest, it took me a while to get an attorney. And the primary reason, like we said, was just thinking of funding.
Yeah.
You know, I try to be as professional as can be, and this comes from a mentor of mine, just to try to get people to take you serious.
Yeah.
So I didn't want the mother of my child to think I was not serious about this when I approached. That's why the situation lingered on more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I got support from my lady, and she was like, Drew, hey, this is time to go see your daughter. And this was during the pandemic time. So when I had that support from her as well, and backing support where things got difficult, she'll tell me like, hey, Drew, you need to stay on top of this, stay on top of
Yeah.
your lawyer. And that made it a little bit easier and more. I'm more passionate about getting things done. Not that I wasn't passionate about, but to answer your question, once I came up with the money during the pandemic time, and I was trying to figure out what attorneys to find, that was one of the most frustrating and stressful things to actually deal with.
Yeah.
Because you got the funding, then you're saying to yourself, hey, do I just want to give it to just anybody?
Right.
Then you're thinking to yourself, should I just do it by myself? Then you're like, what the heck do I do? Then you might stretch yourself out to the point where your health is not good. Just to say, you know what I mean? And the money doesn't even matter. So I was looking through online, and prior to that, just doing research about what attorneys does and things of that nature, so I don't look as if I'm not approaching this the right way.
Serious. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you want to be you you don't want to just put your livelihood or your daughter's life into somebody else's hands. So I was doing a lot of research about what they do first, and it was really stressful. And then trying to figure out where I should get an attorney. Now at that point in time, I'm already down in Boston, so
And your court case is still in Maine.
that is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. So because of the court case was open in Maine, I had to primarily handle it in Maine
Yeah.
until I'm not sure exactly what is done, but maybe is I'm not gonna speak on it, but it might be if your daughter moves to Boston, or if she stays there a significant amount of time, then you might be able to start a transfer it over. But she was there consistently, so when I did some research on where you should get a lawyer, um, it was best that I got a lawyer that was more familiar. And this is what my mom told me when she was a lawyer as well. She said that, hey, you might want to get a lawyer in Maine because they're more familiar with the court system out
Every
there.
every state is different with all their how they handle the court system.
Correct, correct. So it's important, that you get a lawyer out there. So one thing that I want to tell fathers is that if you're typing a lawyer case, or you're looking for a lawyer online, anything can pop up.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what I realized. So, and that's the kind of the scenario. So I kept digging online, and some of maybe the best lawyers you might not see directly there, and the proper reviews might not be directly there. So the lawyer that I found was one of the lawyers that was primarily directly online. And one of the things I did, I looked up the pictures of their law firms and try to look at as much research as I can on
Yeah.
that lawyer and things of that nature. But I don't believe that his specialty was child custody.
Right.
But to my but he did mention that he dealt with a lot of child custody cases.
Yeah.
So before I even dealt with him specifically, I did research, and I probably, and this is truthfully, um, maybe 4 years before actually solidifying a court case with him, I had called him.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Prior to that,
Yeah.
before I left, and I called them, and I think that's why I chose them, because you're going through these things, but you might not have the funding, and you might have. So I called them and tried to see how it was.
Yeah.
And so when I was trying to find a lawyer, I called him again to see if he's still around.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that people don't understand is when your kids are young and you go to court and you get custody or whatever your final comes out to be,
Yeah.
that's until your kids are 18. So you really have to think about that, and your attorney has to kind of clue you in on what we sign here is till your kids are 18. So you might not care about Christmases, or you might not care about
Right.
birthdays right now, but your schedule might open up. You might be when they're older, 10 years down the road, that schedule is going to be the same until they're 18. So it's like
Right.
that's a huge thing that a lot of people I don't think understand.
That's very important.
Yeah.
That's very, very
Yeah.
important. And just to add on to that, when I found the lawyer, he what kind of bothered me with the lawyers was that they're not going to give you any type of information to make you comfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's not trying to down the lawyer who I had. I think he was a decent lawyer, but a lot of things I personally felt I could have handled myself, but you have to have the knowledge. And if you're not a lawyer, it's gonna stress you out, because a little small paperwork, or which we consider small, can be done, and the court will give you some benefit of the doubt and understand that you don't have that knowledge, and maybe pass by it, but they do want to see you have a lawyer, so that things can be handled in a professional manner. But my experience of him not giving me certain type of information and things of that nature, I had to kind of just say, hey, you know what, Drew, you're just gonna have to take this.
Yeah, I mean,
Take
but you
this
said it.
risk.
You said it earlier too. You're like, you got to stay on top of your lawyer, which is true, because they're not going to stay on top of it. You got to stay on top of it. You got to be
have to.
contacting them, be like, hey, any new news? What's going on?
Correct. Times that I called him, and while I was dealing with some very difficult times, while we had some things established during like the pre-trials, and having like some set dates where I actually can see my daughter at that point in time, because what they try to do is set up some small dates, nothing completely solidified, okay, that you can work around and say, oh, this works.
Yeah.
And eventually you can solidify it. At one point in time, when I called them and I was dealing with not being able to see my daughter, she wasn't allowing me to see my daughter in point in time, because I have to travel from Maine to Boston. And she might feel different about it, or she might felt I was running behind or something I did. He was on vacation.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he's telling me he's traveling, and I'm upset about that. And I'm like, hey, I gave you this certain amount of money and stuff of that nature, and you should be helping me out. This is a difficult time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I understand that, and I apologize for it, but I felt it was a little unfair. But with my lawyer's situation, he definitely, like I said, he was a good lawyer, but I had to try to figure it out on my own eventually, which I don't recommend is the best idea. But I think it was to the point where I felt things was being a little bit more solidified, and things was coming down more to a conclusion where I felt that I was going to see my daughter, that I said, okay, I might step away from you a little bit. And I seen that my fundings was coming to an end, and the stipend I gave him was coming to an end. So I decided not to go through with a lawyer, and kind of started.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing too. Is once you get away from that first initial down payment or whatever you pay them,
Right.
you always got to re-up because they want to make sure they're paid. So it's like
Correct.
if this drags on, you're just spending,
Correct.
Spending. Like you said, with the 18 part, just to tell fathers, like so right now, I get an opportunity to see my daughter pretty frequent times, right? And you can plan that out, but it has to be an agreement amongst you and the mother.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult part. And because at the same time, not saying that the courts favor the moms, but how they approach it or how they phrase it is that uh this lady had this child in her stomach for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then they're around them, feeding them, breastfeeding them, or whatever it may be, and tailoring to that child or making sure that the child is good, which you love that person for, you care for that person for, because they bared your child. But at the same time, you know, they don't want to take that child away from their mom.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how do we do this? Allow the father to be in the child, but not just boom, take that child away, which we both don't want.
Right.
So how do you slowly?
So it's tough. I mean, some states, what I think should happen, it should be, no matter what split, it should be 50-50 and go from there. If as the father, if you can't take care of your kids for 50-50, then it needs to go down. Perfect.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? But it always should start at 50-50. The tough thing is, since back in the day, women were the caretakers. Women were the ones raising the kids.
Right.
So that's kind of where this stems from, is the dads were off working,
Right,
doing whatever.
right.
The kids would be with the mother. And so when families split, they want the kids to be most comfortable. And where are they most comfortable? With the mom, because the dad's usually at work, not around all day. So that's kind of where it's been, but it's definitely turning. Fathers are getting a lot more time. Fathers are getting 50-50. I think, but still, there still needs to be some change. I mean, there's some deadbeats out there for sure that don't even, they just dip out and whatever. But it's
That's
like
exactly
the fathers
what
that
the word
want to
is,
be,
deadbeat.
the fathers that want to be in their kids' lives. It's a tough road to go down to the court system and do all that, because a lot of states, the mother does have the upper hand just
Correct.
by being the mother.
Correct. So I'm gonna build on both of that, like the 50-50 until you're 18. When you make that court order and it's solidified, and like you said, it's on paper, what you have to understand is that court order is going to linger on till they're 18. So when you see that document and you're like, why didn't I see my child for that point in time? You have to put in what they call a motion so that you can make those adjustments.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have it on paper and it doesn't work out, or it didn't work out that way, it just gives that mother that responsibility to follow through with that order. So that gives you a little bit more backup rather than something
Hoping that she agrees and does follow through. Yeah,
follows through. And usually they do, because usually they do, because if they're not, then if you can prove it, it just shows that you are a good father that's trying to be there. And so for fathers, and I can speak for myself, okay? I'm not the perfect father. There's times that I am late, but not really bad, because I'm traveling from Boston to Maine. So it's a long drive, and I'll say the latest I've been was 15 minutes to a half an hour. Because later than that, it's not a good look on me.
To be honest, though, that's not that bad, especially with the traffic and stuff. That's not that bad.
But you shouldn't be late.
Right,
you know what I mean? You shouldn't be late, and I recommend that. And that's really important, and to make those times, and you have to be consistent with that. I do wish that it would be 50-50, like you said, because I said the same thing. I'm like, why isn't it 50-50? Now, when I look at it at the same time, when you put it in perspective, there's a lot of deadbeats out there.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of deadbeat moms, because the moms will portray as if everything is perfect on their end. And, for the fathers that pay child support, and I pay child support, like I said, once that thing's on paper, you're paying child support.
Right. Yeah.
Unless it's not agreed on. So you're paying child support. And if it's not on paper, once it's put on paper, you have, and this is important, one of the biggest things I'm going to say right now. Save your receipts or documentations
Huge.
that you are making um sacrifices and making payments towards your child.
Because you have to show that you're
You have to prove
providing and
it.
doing things. Yeah, and that's what sucks is you have to prove that you're doing that stuff for your kids.
And so what I'm happy about, which I wasn't so happy about, was that she did document it. And that's one of the reasons why I said, you know what? It's not a big deal. Right now, since my daughter's really young and it's not 50-50, and I'm okay with that because I had to figure out my life. My child's mother's situation was way better than I was. Way better. Okay. She has a mom and father, and she has countless family out there. So she has super support. So one of the main things that the court asked me when they said when I was in Boston, when I got a chance to speak directly with a judge, face to face, was who do you have down there? Okay, and like as far as friends, family members, and they mean primarily family members, people that they can count on. And I believe the reason why they asked that was if you're in health issues or if you have anything that's going on down there, she has some extra support. So they look at that support factor, okay? How you can really support it in regards to you, then the backup support and taking care of your child. So when I could prove that my sister is a teacher, just not a random person that's just moving around. And then I had primarily my sister, and I had a girlfriend, and things of that nature that was there that could be supportive and things of that nature. They were really open to things of that nature. But if when you're saying 50-50 and you don't have support and you can't even support yourself, and you're asking to go see the child and they don't have necessarily a place to stay or a room, and those are significant factors. Where the child gonna sleep? Some parents might be more open to say, okay, he has a house, okay, the child can crash the couch, or we can get an air mattress or stuff of that nature. But some parents and moms like, no, we had a room. I had to have a room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not what to say necessarily had to have. I don't know how the judge approaches, but I believe that's the scenario.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Respectfully speaking, that's a scenario. You got to have a room for your child. So to conclude, what I'm trying to say is that to have those documents on paper, and it's not easy, to say, okay, I'm just gonna buy my daughter something, I'm gonna save the receipt to prove it. You just want to be happy to say I got my child something. You know what I mean? You're not trying to say I'm trying to put it on tax or anything.
Yeah, that's the hard part. They told me to do that, and it's just like, take pictures at the playground, do this, prove that you're a good dad. It's like, you're out there having fun. It's like you're not even thinking about
like that.
Oh, I got to save this receipt, and then if you do think about it, it just ruins the whole vibe, the whole time with your kid. It's like
vibe.
So yeah, it's tough, but yeah, you just got to keep fighting, stay strong, and
For
all
sure.
that.
It does certainly ruin the vibe when you're, and you just gotta approach it a different way. Just, when you do look back at those pictures, they can be really crucial. Because when you say to yourself, when I went to see my lawyer, and I was just like, look, I do see my daughter. Like, I went up so many times and it was just like, no, you can't see her. And it just crushed me. And so I'm close to like tearing up in front of the guy, thinking about these past situations, and ask him directly. All right, before I give you I forget this direct name of the stipend that you give him, but there's a specific name for it. After I give you this, am I gonna be able to see my daughter? he wouldn't answer me directly. And the reason why is because he doesn't know me. He doesn't have no background of what the situation was, or what he can really do for me and things of that nature. What my professionalism is, if there was any abuse involved and things of that nature. So it's good to have these documents where you can show, like, hey, on this date I was here, on this date I was here for a certain amount of time, and then it can prove the consistency. Then it also, right, the consistency. And then with child support, which you're gonna have to pay, and fathers, you're gonna have to pay. And just to be honest, it's not a lot for the moms. You know what I mean? If they really don't have much support, you know, but at the same time, that's why you have to be there as well. And if the mom's willing to allow you to be there, it could be supportive, because then they can get their time frame to do what they have to do, take care of their lives and so forth. But if you can show that, it can take a little bit off the child support. So my daughter's halfway to being 18 now. And what's important was I didn't really save a lot of my receipts, but and which could have helped, but it really didn't really matter. The court ain't asking, give me receipts, unless you're like, I want to prove it's not like that.
Right.
There's so much things is if it gets to that point where you're $20,000 in debt with that's a different scenario. But I was already paying child support a couple months into my daughter being born. And they beat me for it. They took it out my taxes.
Oh yeah.
They took it out my checks.
Right when somebody goes to court and signs that, you're right. You got to pay child support right there.
I had no choice.
Yeah.
No matter what was going on in my life, they were gonna get it.
Yeah, different states are different, so it's like, you know, they'll take it out of your paycheck, but like percentage wise, it's all different.
Different. So it's based off your income. I guess my income used to go up and decrease and go up. So it was a decent balance, you know what I mean? But you know, when you put in perspective, they'll take it out. My situation was weekly. So when you see that decent amount come out weekly, it's a percentage where that it's enough where the mother, if she does a little bit, that she can take care of the child.
Yeah.
Okay, to my understanding, like they could do a little bit and figure out how to use the American system and so forth, which I didn't really understand the system and things of that nature. I was just working and trying to support myself. And I'm talking about just the system where you can get certain funding for food and stuff of that nature. Don't want to get into that. And then it can back up with the child support. So I was able to pay my child support, and I said to her that I wasn't going to get off of child support because I knew how much I had to pay.
Yeah.
So whenever it was like a decent amount, I tried to make a sufficient pay towards it to deduct the amount.
Yeah.
So now, by the grace of God, I'm all caught up with child support, and things are flowing a little bit better in regards to my custody battle. It's just something that's very important, because if your child support is not really up there, it just doesn't support your case well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, we'll end it there.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for sharing your story.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Definitely a stress reliever, you know, to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And it's always good to talk about it with somebody you trust, because it's not an easy topic.
All right. Well, there's two sides to every story. This is our side, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, guys.